Well, good evening, everyone, and a special hello for those that I know, and I see a bunch of names of colleagues of mine, so welcome. So I wanted to give an update on some of the work that I've been doing and others in the state, and I want to give a shout out to a couple of people who have helped with this research, which is basically the state's research. And that is Drew Stanzeski, Michael Stewart, Andy Dillman, Ed Fimble, and Matt Belanger, who have helped in with some of the data, with some of the references and things like that. So I'm going to start. So for those of you who don't know, that is Jack Crescent in the hole, good old Jack. And that is the Snyder site, which is a Paleoindian site in northern Jersey along the Delaware River. And so what I'm going to do this evening is sort of give a brief overview of what we know about Paleoindians in New Jersey. I'm going to cover the information that we currently have and how I'm collecting it, how other people have been collecting it, not so sort of a little bit. I sort of put it into a database that have at the office along with our collections management software, which has a bunch of sites, has all the sites in it as well. And then I'm going to talk about the results and the significance of the update, which probably about 20 to 30 new points have been found since I gave this talk in 2017. So we've got another, so 5 years have gone by. And then I'm going to talk about some of the research or some of the what has come up because of the research in how I think we should be looking at mitigation of these areas and where either, especially due to sea level rise and erosion of the shorelines, and you'll see what I'm talking about at the end, how that's impacting Paleoindian sites as well as other sites in the state. So I want to start off by talking a little bit about the climate. And so obviously the last major glacial advance 23,000 years ago, that's when the last time the glaciers advanced. And then we start to see about 18,000 years ago, the glaciers receding, the temperatures are getting slightly warmer. Then as far as the late glacial period, it's divided up into a number of different sections. And so those sections are about the time Paleoindians are coming into North America and making their way. And we start to see warming. We start the older Dryas, it gets cold again. What's interesting is that most of the literature talks about the extinction of megafauna during the 11,500 period. And the question marks are there because a number of new radiocarbon dates have been obtained on Pleistocene megafauna, not only throughout New Jersey, but a couple of samples from Pennsylvania and New York as well, which indicate that the megafauna have not necessarily gone extinct around 11,500. We still see a number of them into the younger Dryas period. And so the younger Dryas, where it's again suddenly cold and dry, and then that's when we have middle Paleoindian and then late Paleoindian periods. And so New Jersey, and if you've seen pictures of Paleoindian points, either in the ASNJ bulletin or elsewhere online, you notice that they're all not the same. They are very different. New Jersey is not unique. It occurs across the middle Atlantic and the Northeast. There are different styles because we have different time periods, early, middle, and late Paleo. That's where we start to see these migrations of different styles of points based on either hunting or hafting into the spearhead, whatever is easier. So you can see this is a sequence of points taken from Bradley, and these are basically north of New Jersey, but you could see the different styles, the different types, from all the way to the left at 12,900. And these are all dated sites in the New England. The tall, narrow with a large, long flute, all the way to 11.6, where you've got really small, squat kind of points. I also wanted to thank Kurt Carr, which I put on the bottom of the slides there. He borrowed a couple of his slides from his paleo talk a couple of years ago. And so here are fluted spear points from Pennsylvania. Shawnee Minisink site at the the left side of the screen, 11,000 years before present. Another fluted point came out of Shawnee Minisink later. That one was from the 1970s excavation by American University. But again, you can see how the difference, you see different paleo points, sizes, shapes. Some have a flute, some barely have a flute, some have the flute going from the bottom to the top. And then at the very far right, you can see a date of 11,100 from the Wallace site. And of course, a variety of different lithic materials as well. There are one of two sites that have a huge range of variation. The Shoup site in Pennsylvania, and then the Plenge site in New Jersey, where hundreds of Paleoindian points have been identified, and they range from early to late as well. The lithic material also came from a long distance from where the lithic material, the stone material, actually came from. So one of the models that archaeologists have used, we take models from other archaeologists who have done it for other regions, and we sort of, for the Middle Atlantic, we've sort of adapted their models for the kinds of sites and diagnostics that we find, diagnostic meaning fluted points, that we find on sites in the New Jersey and the Middle Atlantic region. So you can see here that Anderson has made what's called leapfrog model of Paleoindians as they go across the landscape in various ways and various trajectories, making their way from the west all the way to the east. And that is related to how we find those points and the differences in those points. Some come in groups of Paleoindians come from the north, or it's from they're coming west. They go either north or they go south and then around, because you've got the Appalachians in the middle. And obviously, they want to take the path of least resistance. So one of the ways for that we've adapted that model is by looking at the sites across the landscape and what kind of styles of points. So the early Paleo period, Clovis and Gainey entrance, you can see the Cactus Hill site, which has pre-Clovis and Clovis, the Paleo Crossing site, Shawnee Minisink, and then the Hiscock site in New York. And so those are those two trajectories that we see those points coming, because we find them as you travel through the Northeast. And then for the Plano Dalton Hardaway, the same thing, but you've got other ways that they're coming in because the glaciers and the temperatures and the areas that you can traverse now are more accessible and easily traveled. So these are some of the recent finds that have been reported to the State Museum through colleagues that have identified these points. As you can see, a point from Lawrenceville, which I've misspelled, but don't worry about that. Just look at the point. So basically, it's almost triangular in shape. There is a flute and a worked area. Then there's a paleo point from Alpha, New Jersey on the lower left. And then the area in and around Frenchtown along the Delaware River, there are a number of points of different styles that you can see there that have been identified. And one of the things that I always go back to is Herb Kraft, who wrote the sort of volume on the Plenge site many years ago. And he indicated that Paleoindian occupation within the state of New Jersey is far more complex and prevalent than we previously thought. And that's true. And it's true and sad in the sense that while there's so much development and progress in the state, we're losing the sites that we have read about or knew about. Some are still being found, but what's more sort of heartbreaking is the sites that we don't know about that are offshore, that are being destroyed, and we find the remnants being washed up. And we'll get to that in a minute. I may have to just move. Where am I here? Okay, so I can't see some of my screen, but so the update, from Mason all the way down to Snyder is pretty much the same number of points. What has been added to is the collectors and isolated finds, etc. So like I mentioned earlier, a number of individuals at Fimble, Michael Stewart, and some other collectors who have emailed me for identifications or whatnot. We've added, or I have added to this database a little bit more, somewhere between 20 and 40 additional paleo finds. And so the count now is up to 553. It was, I think, just shy of 500 the last time. Also, what was also updated was a number of other characteristics or criteria for the sites that we have information about. So things like whether or not other artifacts were found at the site related to Paleoindians. So if a diagnostic fluted point was found or a paleo point, was there anything else found with it, like a scraper or other types of Paleoindian materials? And those would add to the database. And you'll see in a second, it also adds to some of the questions that we want to answer as far as how long the site may be occupied for, based on the wider variety of tools that are found at the site. Other things that were updated were whether or not, what kind of landform. Sometimes someone will put terrace and it's actually a knoll, or they'll put floodplain and it's actually a terrace or something like that. So those were sort of tweaks and things that were added and changed to the database. So this spreadsheet, basically, obviously it's always a work in progress, but this came from Peter Pagalatis's 2004 paper publication on Paleoindians in New Jersey. His paper was focused on pretty much not necessarily, I guess, all of New Jersey, but it was a small subset. It was about 90 sites, 94 sites or so. He had some of the sites we have in this database. He also had more pinelands, a couple of pineland locations. Now that's the part of the database that is still pretty much lacking, and you'll see evidence of that. We don't have a lot of information about those types of early sites that were found in the Pinelands area. Now, whether that's, and you'll see later, whether it's a survey bias or not, I don't know. There may be just literature that we haven't looked for. And so, we'll have to keep on looking and we'll see. But you can, from the spreadsheet here, you can see, obviously, we have the county, township, number of points found at the site. And if there is a site number, the Smithsonian trinomial number that we assign to archaeological sites, and whether or not the site has a site name. And then what physiographic province is the site located in? So is it in the Piedmont lowlands? Is it in the intercoastal plain, the outer coastal plain, or something like that? Also, the primary and secondary drainages. So is it along the Absecon Creek? Is it along the Mullica River? Is it along right on the Delaware, or is it right on the on the bay, or the Raritan, or things like that? And then, obviously, for purposes of site registration, but also for looking at the data, we have the UTM coordinates, the actual locations of those, where those find spots are, or where the points are. Right, so this is one of the things. ACI is determined by the presence or absence of artifact classes that that Pagelatis has identified. So fluted points, end scrapers, unified flakes, and things like that, of which, some sites have just channel flakes or paleo remnants, and others just have diagnostics. So one of the things we see, and here's the actual number of sites per county. Interested Burlington obviously has a lot. Monmouth County, a little bit, Gloucester, Hunterdon, and Mercer, and Salem as well. Physiographic preference. So when you look at nothing but where these sites are located, if they're located in the ridge and valley, the outer coastal plain, the intercoastal plain, you can see obviously 43% are located in the intercoastal plain, which is also kind of interesting. There's only one site that's listed in the intercoastal plain and outer coastal plain, and I'm still trying to figure out if that's true or not. It sort of looks like it when I look at the actual GIS data, which seems to be, I'm not 100% out on that, but we'll have to see. But it's because it's only one site. Now here's the landform preference. So where these sites are located on the landscape. And you can see, obviously, for all intents and purposes, the terrace is the largest one. 13.6% are on the floodplain. Knolls, 6.8. Periglacial features, which Jack Cresson, Tony Bonfiglio have talked about a great deal, where a lot of fluted points or Paleoindian and early archaic sites have been found on these periglacial features, which is not surprising at all. So there are 226, give or take, points, diagnostic points that were found at the Plenge site. So just to give you the largesse of the Plenge in relation to the other counties, this is what you come up with. The plunge site, obviously in Warren County, is giving a skewed variation of the amount of points. So I took out plunge, and basically the Warren County point count goes to just about 60. And Burlington also is very close to 60, but I can't see a whole bunch. But and that's because of a number of archaeological sites and areas along the Delaware River. So when the data is plotted, you can see where all these points are located. So Burlington, Salem, the ones really at the edge of the Atlantic Ocean are the shore find sites. So those were not found necessarily on actual fields or, on some, they were found washed up on the shore. Now you can see in the sort of where the pinelands are, there's nothing there. However, when you actually put the pinelands map on southern New Jersey, a few do occur within the boundaries of the pinelands. However, there's a large area missing. Now, like I said before, I'm not sure if that's survey bias or just, I know that there's been a number of archaeological surveys in the Pinelands. I'm just, I think that there might be something going on there that we haven't really looked at, and that we might want to look at it sometime in the future. This is just a quick update of some of those megafauna dates that we got in about 2015, and you can see the stag moose from Mount Herman at 9,700, and another date from a different aspect of the animal came back at 10.3. So, and a lot of them in the 11s as well. So these megafauna are still around, even though a lot of other early literature say that they're extinct. Here's a shot of the megafauna locations identified throughout the state and obviously offshore. This was put together by Matthew Belanger a number of years ago, and it's continually being updated. He also did Pennsylvania as well, but we're just looking at New Jersey here. However, when you look at the Paleoindian finds and megafauna finds, now I may be stretching it a bit, but to me, there's just some interesting missing pieces. And the missing pieces are that sort of central part of the state. Why aren't there anything there? Whether it's the Pinelands or whether it's in Middlesex County, they're on the fringes. They're close to the Atlantic Ocean and close to the Delaware River. Obviously major water sources during Paleoindian times, they were a lot lower. So are we looking at, they were situated on remnant terraces? That's completely possible. So one of the things that I wanted to mention that I think has a great deal of effect and impact on Paleoindian sites is the fact that we're losing a lot of shoreline. And whether or not the sites are at the edge or whether they were thousands of years ago, now under the water, we're losing more, and we're also finding a lot of diagnostics, not necessarily fluted points like on the Atlantic shore, but we're finding a lot of diagnostics in the Bay, Cape May, Cumberland County area. There are almost every day, there are people that post online their beach combing and finding points all over. So it's it's happening. And you can see here, East Point Lighthouse, for those familiar with the East Point Lighthouse, beautiful little lighthouse. The 1882 ocean survey, the point was where the first arrow is, and currently it's there. I think it was over 600 feet difference. That's now gone. And there's, after seeing this, there's no way that there's no way that, you're going to be able to find anything. Dorothy Cross had excavated here a number of, obviously in the 40s. And so you can see how much destruction is happening. Here's Fort Ellsberg. In 1882, that's where the 678 feet difference. I remember going out there with two colleagues to look for the Fort Ellsberg, and thinking that there wasn't that much of a change in shoreline. Oh, I was so wrong. Anyway, yeah, so that is completely, and this is basically the shoreline survey maps that were done by the US government, overlaid on the Google Earth image. So anybody can do this at your own leisure, which is pretty mind-blowing when you actually look at how much the shoreline has changed in certain areas. On the Atlantic Ocean side, it hasn't changed that much, especially by Cape May. Little bits of land have accumulated in some areas, but there hasn't been that much erosion. So, so some of the conclusions, obviously, we're going to keep on recording any finds that we get in the state. If anyone here goes out and finds fluted points, please make a note of some of those things like landforms, if there are other artifacts, where your drainage, what the nearest drainage is. And one of the things I like to do is identify additional megafauna samples so that we can carbon date them. And also, instead of looking at sites per se that may be destroyed in the future, what I think, and this is something that the Mid-Atlantic Archaeology Conference had brought up, and the climate group, is that maybe we should be looking at vulnerable landscapes themselves and landforms due to erosion, so as not to focus on the minute, but on the larger picture. And one of these things is most of these are occurring in the Delaware Bay, and I'm trying to promote a little bit more engagement with the communities, the individuals that are going out and looking, so that we can start to record them, at least to have that data, so we can at least see from year to year or even month to month what's going on, and basically to continue to create those database of those finds, including diagnostic and locational information. So thank you very much. I think I went over a bit, but hopefully we have some time for lots of questions. And I thank you very much for listening. These are these are a few of the points which you probably saw on the intro that have been identified.